Hello everyone, welcome back to the final stretch of This Way Up 2020. I am Eleanor Thornley, I am the manager of Film Hub Midlands based in Broadway in Nottingham, and I'm coming to you live from my opulent and luxurious living room in Nottingham. It feels very, very weird to not have an audience to vibe with, but my cat is here, so hopefully that will give me something to pay off, but she is currently asleep. So we have a lovely session coming up. What we wanted to do at the end of this new and exciting online conference was to have a minute to reflect on things that come out of it. And obviously this being such a bizarre, difficult, challenging year, won't have words to describe the year, now we're in December, but we wanted to have a moment to reflect on some of the main points coming out of the conference. So that's what we're going to do. And I would really like it if you would, using the chat, which I have here open, I would really love it if all of our delegates could throw some things in there of things that have been their biggest takeaways, anything you want to ask the panel as I introduce them, and generally get involved in this final discussion because we can't all meet in the beautiful bar at Watershed as we would have liked. So maybe we can attempt to recreate some of that conversation now. So I'm going to introduce first of all Jazz, who is going to be doing some drawing for us. Hi Jazz.
Hi.
Hello Jazz, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Jazz. I'm an illustrator and designer. I'm based in Bristol and I'm a resident at the PM studio at Watershed as well. And yeah, I'm just going to be live sketching the session and yeah, just trying to pick out parts of conversations and themes and topics and stuff. So yeah, that's what I'm here to do.
Thank you. We decided that as given that we won't have beautiful photos and footage of people wandering around Watershed looking brilliantly inspired and having fabulous times and wearing their fabulous outfits, we would like to capture some essence of what's happening. So Jazz is going to try and illustrate some of these thoughts coming out of this conversation. So thank you. And now I'd like to introduce the rest of the panel. We have Jack and Manon from our development forum and Liz, who is a delegate. Hi, everyone. Hello, thank you for making it through to 4:47 on the third day. Should we introduce yourself? Manon, would you like to go first?
Yes, sure. Hi, I'm Manon. So as you said, I was part of the development forum this year, which was a blast. So thank you for having me. I work for Sheffield Dogfest as the marketplace producer, and I'm currently in the office. It looks a bit like this kind of like investigation room in like police films, so it's a bit bleak. But yeah, I'm here, and I have short brown hair. I'm a white woman in my late 20s, wearing a black t-shirt and looking quite tired, but very enthusiastic and full of coffee. So,
thanks, Manon. Jack.
Hi everyone. Yeah, I was like Manon on the development forum this year as well, which was incredible, really inspiring, and great to be connected with people in a year when we've been so disconnected, I suppose. So that was fantastic and a real privilege. So thanks again for inviting me onto that and being part of the early stages of the programme. I work as Director of Theatrical Sales at Park Circus, based in Glasgow, where I am right now. Yeah, for those of you who don't know, I suppose we're a distributor that represent classic film libraries from the major Hollywood studios as well as British libraries as well. And my job is working with all you wonderful cinemas, not just in the UK, but all around the world. So yeah, it's a pleasure to be at this closing session of This Way Up.
Thanks, Jack. And Liz?
Hi everyone, I'm Liz Chege. I'm the Festival Director of Africa in Motion Film Festival, which takes place in Scotland, mainly Glasgow and Edinburgh. Recently relocated up to Glasgow from Bristol, so I'm very sad not to be at Watershed for this. I miss them dearly. I am a Black woman with long black braids, wearing a white blouse, and also looking very tired because we just finished our festival. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for joining us. I know it's been a busy time for you. So I guess I'm going to open up the conversation with a very small question, which is, this has been such a difficult time, but I found that this conference has found a way to be massively positive, and to, you know, even when things are challenging, that the resilience and passion in this sector is always so inspiring to me, and it's what gets me through. And so I suppose that's been a real takeaway for me, but I would really like to hear from you. What have been your takeaways from this last 3 days, and has it been a chance to reflect at a time when people have either been really full on, or there's been a lot of other pressures to really reflect on what it is we do and why we do it? Manon, you take it away.
Oh, sure. Well, what I thought was really, really interesting is how, like, every session I attended was so practical, like so oriented towards what do we do next, and all the takeaways that I have are like just very, very pragmatic. There was so many interesting conversation about how to improve recruitment practices, some resources shared by Back2 and the Film and TV charity about how we can go back to a better work environment with free resources online. And I really like the young audience development session, which was so oriented on like those very small things that seem like nothing, like good Wi-Fi and price tickets, and are just so important in like ensuring that we go back to, like, for audiences, for the people who work in this industry, for the filmmakers, for everybody involved at every stage, to have really practical takeaways. Also, like what I think I'm going to go back to and read thoroughly with the 7 inclusive principles that were discussed by, I don't remember the name of the organization that devised them, but they were really interesting.
It'll all be available on the emails coming through to you, I'm sure.
I guess for me, I think it's a really good point, Manon. I think it feels like there's been quite a lot of data provided as well. I know that you know, having people from like Airstream, for example, and the BFI providing some data has been really interesting when I've kind of stepped into sessions to see what's going on. And I think one of the things that I took away from, again, the sessions that I dropped in on was really the kind of agreement that the conversation itself, no matter what it is, has been so useful and yeah, not normally quite positive from what I've seen as well, despite it being a difficult year. And I think that was something that was very much one of the challenges with the development forum, was it was constantly kind of, how can the program be refined? How can it be kind of brought down to a manageable number of sessions? Because doing it virtually obviously brings up so many opportunities to expand what can be done and bring a level of accessibility to it as well, which is great. But I guess, you know, one thing that came up that kind of struck me as well at that time was that there's only so much that This Way Up can do. It's almost that there's so many things that we can talk about, so many things that are really, really important. But this is only 3 days, you know, within our year. This is only one event. But I think what really strikes me, that the amazing part of this is, you know, how this can sort of encourage greater collaboration, a kind of sense of collectiveness as well, across the industry, and sort of challenging what the industry is and how many people can we get involved in it, which I think is great to have people from box office reporting organizations to independent theaters to programmers and all different parts, you know, all different roles within these organizations as well. I think it's almost, you know, kind of that question of how can this happen more frequently, with as many people as possible, because I think it's very easy to get bogged down in the day-to-day of emails and the busyness, and, you know, not taking lunch breaks because you're working from home and the day is stretching out. But what really matters for all this to really happen and get enacted is the conversation and speaking to other people, and speaking to people outside of your organization, which I think has also been really powerful because it can challenge what you yourself are doing. So I think literally almost the conversation itself it's very difficult to pin down one, but the fact there's been so many and so much of it, I think has been really, really great to see.
I think in a year where connections felt quite difficult, it's, you know, we're doing this on, you know, a digital platform. We're not in a room together, and I think a lot of that, those opportunities where people would come together have been so, although we've had more connectivity in so many ways, those soft connections aren't always there. It's always a meeting, it's always a reason to be there, as opposed to, oh, I'm in the bar or in the foyer and I've just come out of a screening and I can talk to somebody about what I've just seen. Those kind of little moments, I think, have been I've missed them, you know, those soft connections. So I think in a way, the chat function on this has been wonderful, just to see people having a nice conversation in the digital meeting rooms. Liz, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say thank you to the entire This Way Up team and all the speakers for the last few days. So like looking as how we're rewriting this next chapter, or even just writing it, like in my case, I haven't led an organization of this size before, so there's a lot that's new to me. But I've loved how generously everybody has been sharing complex notions of what resilience could mean and what that could look like. I feel really enriched. And I don't know about everybody else, but I learned a lot from the chat function, actually, from everything to do with Spanish flu to, you know, distribution. And I think maybe the thing that stuck out, just to look at, looking back at your question, is how every component of the entire kind of film journey is so important, which was obvious before, but in a way that's much more enhanced now, I guess, because of what's going on. And I've really enjoyed watching how everybody has come together. I've been part of the pandemic response team by Mia Bays, which has been really, really great for me. And it kind of released that pressure to know unknowable things. Especially if you've never kind of experienced this kind of level of stress before. So I'm just grateful to be here and to listen in.
Well, you're welcome, but also thank you. We can't do it without delegates, without people engaging with the programme. And I think that what has been very interesting for me is the level of engagement across the 3 days has been strong, and that I think definitely the conversations that have been had in that, you know, as you say, it's been across the ecosystem of what it is. And I think there's been some quite interesting questions around what is the film sector. We talk about it, like the film sector, but what is that? Because as with any sector, it's people. It's people from creators to the other end, where it's then consumed, and all of those people along the way. And that's the film sector. And it's quite interesting to see some of those perceived barriers or sort of separations in our industry dissolve a little bit across this time. I mean, I don't know how you feel, Jack, as working in distribution. You know, that's often a distribution exhibition and the difference there. But how you feel that it's sort of this year has been seismic, I think, in changes in that relationship.
Yeah, it definitely has. I mean, you know, Park Circus also works internationally, so it's been you know, it's been even more interesting for us from that perspective. And I think there's obviously been so much to be anxious about, a lot of stresses, but you know, the silver lining that I found is there is a lot more scope for conversation. To kind of go back to the point I was just making, I suppose, is actually for us working as a distributor, you know, we're not a distributor that always, you know, kind of acquires a slate of 10 films and we follow a release model. We're quite flexible as is anyway. And I think, you know, there's a lot of power in literally just asking the question of the distributor, you know, what can you do? What can you make available to us? And kind of encouraging that collaborative process. And it's obviously very much a two-way street as well, of course. But I think it's spending time to really think about, you know, what you need, what people can help with, and I guess just to kind of rejig these kind of models. Obviously the windowing situation has been brought into question. Repertory has become a big part of programming as well, which I found that really interesting, the conversation that was led by Mark Cosgrove earlier today. And, really saying that, sure, multiplexes are now showing classics, but a very small pool of classics. And, well, what even is a classic as well? Repertory is probably a better word for it, really, in a sense, and then have a separate conversation for classics. But it's, it's been seismic, but I think, through disruption, a lot of change can happen. For sure, good and bad. I think it's just really important to talk to one another, really. I know it's very difficult to rely solely on virtual formats, as it were, but it's something that really needs to continue to happen in ways that make sure that the whole ecosystem can be supported. An exhibition shouldn't be kind of left scrambling with that as well. There needs to be the support for that too. And I think just having the conversation really helps, because everyone's in different spaces, but it's also just about bringing a network together. And I think that's what This Way Up actually really shows is, you've got people from all around the country with different programming models, different setups. Watershed is very different to a lot of other venues, for instance, with all that it does. But there's a real kind of, there's a real bond between everyone, and how can that be garnered even more and taken to the likes of a distributor, for example.
Thank you. Just to go back to Manon, it was just thank you to Alison in the chat. The 7 principles for inclusive recovery is the We Shall Not Be Removed UK Disability Arts Alliance.
Thank you.
And I think there's a really good point in there as well. I think some people in the chat are saying we mustn't make rebuilding the sector, mustn't be rolling back the improvements that have been made in terms of accessibility. And I definitely wholeheartedly agree with that, and I think that's something that this whole question of what are we rebuilding is the name of this particular session, but also a really important question that we need to ask ourselves in all of the changes that we're having to make, making sure that those changes are suitable for everybody, making sure that those changes are inclusive, and that we're, whatever we come out the other side looking like as organisations, as creators, as people working within the film sector, that we're more inclusive and that it's a better place, not a diminished place. I think that's something that's come through very strongly. I don't know how you all feel about, I'm sure you all agree, but it's certainly coming through strongly on the chat as well. I did want to ask a question, Manon, you work for a film festival.
Yes.
And film festivals, and obviously African Motion has just happened. A lot of film festivals had to do some quite serious pivoting this year. And I just wanted to know what you think the positives have come out of that, more of the approach that the festivals had to take this year.
I think that, speaking for Sheffield Doc Fest, which is, by the way, a documentary film festival based in Sheffield, did not mention that. It was quite a nerve-wracking and big enterprise to do an online shift. But I think, as far as I'm concerned, for what I do at Doc Fest, which is the marketplace department, where we like a forum, and we make filmmakers with funders, broadcasters, distributors, commissioners to help support the film. And that online shift was actually, in terms of accessibility, again, in terms of environmental aspects, by avoiding all the travels, and in terms of the kind of like getting straight to business, and kind of just really making sure that we organize an event in spite of a constraint, and we make sure that we kind of like carry on like a business as usual enterprise that was really successful. And it's for like future year, actually, like I think the online aspect will be definitely integrated because of what it has allowed. I was thinking very specifically of a few filmmakers who were basically able to attend because it was online, because they had very, very young infants. And just that something as, you know, simple as allowing someone to actually like go and attend and pitch a project was just really, really important. And in terms of the festival as a whole, I think it really like brought us as a team to appreciate everybody's part in the festival, to really like become extremely aware of not only the work of the artistic team and of the industry team, but also registration, hospitality, coordination, production, all the technical aspect, all these like small parts that make a festival such a big undertaking. And there was a strong like cohesion in the team. And that's really something that I'm talking about inward. Maybe you want me to talk more about the result for the audiences and for the industry, but that was the first thing that came to my mind in terms of the solidarity among the team and the work. And also, I guess the audience engagement was interesting because you can't compare, you know, the impact that and the importance of having a physical festival, especially because I'm very attached to having Sheffield Dogfest happen, because it's also not a capital. It's a northern-based city in a region that is quite working class, and I think in relation to that, having an event that is not London-based of that size is really important. But at the same time, moving online has enabled us to do a lot of audience development that was really valuable. And I think that's something that was also discussed in a few sessions. I thought that was interesting, that the constraint in having to move online and an ability for festival and also for distributors and exhibitors to like, you know, compare like box office and attendance numbers is, you know, to what we're having at the moment. Of course, it's frustrating and it's difficult, but at the same time, it allows us to like really look inward and like take a step back and see where we could do like audience engagement, audience development, and this kind of like quality outreach over numbers in the theaters and numbers in the, you know, that's something that I thought was quite valuable takeaway as well.
Yeah, I think there's some of that kind of actually how you work is really important to think about, and there's this sort of output of, for audiences this is better, but then also like how is it better for, you know, I haven't been on a train since February, which is very weird. I'm normally on trains all the time. And actually, do we need to do that anymore? Do we need to, you know, now we've all become very comfortable with Zoom. How, you know, do we need to continue to force ourselves across the country? But then there's the loveliness of person-to-person contact. So I think it's maybe finding a more healthy balance, moving ahead. Liz, you just finished delivering some audience-facing work online.
Yeah.
And I suppose how, and you're saying, you know, obviously it's the first time you feel you've been responsible for something so large, it was so unlike how presumably you expected it to be. So, you know, how does it make you feel about going ahead, doing this kind of, you know, is it actually there's a medium ground, or are you just like, cannot wait till we're in person again?
We're still collating responses, but I feel like the future is some kind of hybrid situation. It's been overwhelming, the response from across the UK. So we've been able to attract people from across the whole of the UK, whereas previously people wouldn't want to travel all the way to Scotland for the festival. And then we've been fortunate. We surpassed all our targets pretty early on in the festival. So the festival went on for 4 weeks, and we're really pleased at the results. It does help that there were 3 team members, including me, who have marketing experience. So it definitely does help to have those types of people on the team. But we were also able to attract a much wider range of distinguished talent because they didn't have to travel. And, you know, because people have children and other factors that, you know, play into it. So yeah, we've been fortunate. And our opening party, I mean, for example, we had an ultimate house party to open the festival. So a musician from, let's say, Brazil would pass on the baton to someone in Kenya and so on. So we've been able to be much more creative in that way, in terms of events. But without a doubt, venues are too important. And just going back to a conversation earlier with Mark Cosgrove about how there's so much memory encoded in buildings, in venues in cinemas and venues like that, and also how film has an itinerant spirit anyway. So you'd be traveling through the films. I feel like there's no way we can not have venues. They're just too important.
Yeah. I agree. I love a venue. But I think it's interesting to think about what we gain by working differently, and that we don't necessarily have to lose things to gain things. Coming through from the chat, forgive me, it's quite a long message. I'm doing my best to read at the same time, but there is something around that perhaps we haven't had time during this conference to properly discuss some more urgent and concerning issues that have been happening in the sector, and how maybe, I don't think necessarily asking anybody to resolve this question, but how we have those conversations across the industry a little bit more openly, and obviously This Way Up is only one conference, as you said, Jack. So I don't know if any of you have any thoughts around how we move forward having those conversations more openly. I know that we've had some really good sessions on practical ways to do things better, but I guess there's some healing and some confronting that needs to be done, and I don't know, how do we have those conversations going ahead? And I don't know if anyone has any thoughts on that.
I think from my perspective, I think that the film industry, we can question what that is, and I know that again was sort of questioned or challenged what the film industry is in other sessions, but it is, there is a kind of ecosystem to it, and the film industry is a really broad industry, in terms of how do films get financed, produced, to how they then appear in front of audiences and whatever platform they may be, and people have their expertise, their knowledge, their skills, and their power in different fields, and one very much will impact the other. When that impact would hit might be kind of years down the line, but I think what this Way Up is great for is obviously bringing the exhibition community together, and I think what I guess people are sort of commenting on the chat function, that seems to be a really great way to challenge things. I wasn't on the Governance 101 session, but I think it's what industry sort of, whether it's a conference or not, I don't know, but where could there be questions put to people that are across the industry so exhibition can take that to, and it's not forever in the kind of higher up sphere, but it can be from low down, and kind of have a forum for that question to be asked that means that it's not just basically within a bubble. It's that classic thing of, if you, especially on social media, you've got the people that you follow, but you're not really hearing the opposing views, and so you kind of your kind of opinion just gets reinforced potentially over time. And there can be so many things that are such a huge cause of frustration to, for example, exhibitors, but that might be more likely to change if other people can be involved in, hearing out those frustrations that are from the people that could change that. Change can happen within the exhibition industry, distribution, etc., but they are all connected to one another, and I think it's finding spaces for that to happen, almost in a similar way to how this is going on, through the conversation, through just being there. That would be my take.
Okay. Manon?
No, I agree, and I think that what this conference made is making us all aware of is like how like each part of the value chain, like each part of the industry, getting together to like talk about accountability, talk about what we can do together, and like take it beyond punctual events, but actually like finding a way to organize throughout the year and come together to work further this way is something that will be absolutely amazing and very important.
Okay, thank you. Please don't forget to throw some questions in if you have them to us. One sort of nice thing that someone has suggested is some of the quotes and thoughts that have come out of some of the sessions. So favourites so far have been how you are is welcome here from today's recruitment session, and then cinema of possibility. So just little sound bites. So I'll try and capture those and read those out as we go on if you do think of any more. I personally, I just didn't want to not talk about this morning's session, I think, with cinema as culture, with Mark Cosgrove, Jonna Comfort and Heather Stewart, because the chat lit up and it made me realise how little I talk about watching films and how often we talk about, I have, when I talk to my children and they ask me what I do, my job is spreadsheets and meetings, but those spreadsheets and meetings pertain to film, so it's okay. But I don't know how you felt about film this year. Like, what's it, it's been, we haven't been able to as regularly, there's been moments where cinemas have been open, some are reopening now, those of you in tiers 1 and 2. But yeah, how's it been for you guys in film this year? What have you watched that's good?
I love Rocks. I know there was a wee, there was this sort of clip that We Are Parable did of their event at the Rio, which looked amazing. It was so great. I loved hearing the wee boy talk about his performance, and Rocks was so great. And that was brilliant. And I think, going back to that hybrid conversation and like the importance of a venue versus, I think the one good thing that increasing the availability of what we can watch online brings is actually just being able to increase our film knowledge. If you watch something at home, then whenever you next see that in your local cinemas programs, like, oh, amazing, I can go see that on the big screen now, and vice versa, and it's kind of encouraging that, there's never been a better time to expand our film knowledge, and that's not purely through the cinema, but the cinema is of course the best place to watch the films, but yeah, I think that's a great thing, and I love watching that, despite it unfortunately not being in a cinema for me.
Liz?
Oh, it's such an unfair question.
I'm sorry.
No, I've loved so much this year. I mean, I'm obviously biased because of our festival that just finished. But I mean, I loved Rocks as well. I really liked Clemency, which was released earlier this year. There's so many good films, but one that stood out for me, which was at our festival, is called Kemideosh. It's from Cape Verde. Which is a country that doesn't produce many films, but it was kind of a hybrid documentary and fiction film. And it looked at how Africans across the diaspora have this kind of grasping at ancestral memory. And it was just really beautiful. And that's the kind of work you don't get to see or get screened when you're competing with something like The Crown and so on. So yeah, it's been a rewarding year in that sense.
Well, that sounds wonderful. I would love it if you could share with us the details of that film later. Yeah. Great. Mana?
I'm also going to mention the title from Sheffield Dog Fest, which is one of the very few films I actually was able to watch in the cinema, and maybe that's why also I really remember it as a powerful experience, which also brings us back to what you were saying, Liz, about the importance of venue. And I'm very much missing the experience of watching a film in the big screen, and that was Face and Branco by Catherine Hart. It's a documentary about it's a love story between a gypsy guitar player and a British woman who plays the accordion, and it follows them throughout 5 years of their relationship. And they did a live performance on Zoom afterwards. It was extremely messy and very, very charming. And we had some technical issue, and it was all very human and lovely and warm, and made me really, emotional to just remember like being in a dark room. But definitely being able to catch up, as you were saying, Jack, on like a lot of film, and like also like improving my knowledge of all the titles out there, although on a laptop screen.
No, it's difficult, isn't it? I think the last film I saw before lockdown was Emma, which was a great chocolate box kind of, oh, how pleasant. And it was so good on the big screen. And then I did see Rocks in the brief window where I was able to go back to the cinema. But it's been really nice to watch some older films, watch some films with my teenage daughter that she hadn't seen before. Had a really great time in November with a dear friend who's set up a Noirvember screening, and we all watched the same film, Sudden Fear, on Amazon, and then had a chat, and that gave me a little bit of feelings of remember when you'd see a film and talk about it with people. But I think it really came to the fore today when everyone got so excited to talk about memories of film and memories of buildings, just how massively important film is in people's lives, and that's what we do, that's what we give. So that is something that is worth remembering, that it's exciting and a lifeline quite often. I'm just going to check in on the chat. So something else somebody else has pulled out was not a direct quote, but Sadia talking about organisations committing to wage reviews of colour and recognising their role within systems that disenfranchise and devalue the mood. Many organisations made statements to affirm their support for the Black Lives Matter movement, but it would be great to engage with and implement the recommendations in their toolkit. I think over the summer, Black Lives Matter obviously was a massive reckoning moment, but there's certainly, I think, work to be done to follow up on some of those pledges and statements. Sadia's talk was incredible. So definitely get that out on inclusivesigma.org. If you missed that session as well, it should be available in the screen too. And also coming into your inboxes around 5:30. Also, people very excited to talk about the freelancer session. Nice to have the conversations out in the open that would just be reserved for private venting when we all get together. I think that's also something, I think there's a thing to be said for venting. It's helpful at times. So another question then is, what excites you about the future? There's lots of worry still, and we shouldn't diminish that worry. And I don't mean to just sort of lay on the positive, but it is 5:23 on Thursday, and it would be nice to think about what feels, what's the thing that's pulling you through, what excites you, what's come out of this, that not just the takeaways, but it's like, oh, actually I can't wait to think about that and to get my teeth into some of those thoughts, either in your work or personally. Is there anything what's the thing that's exciting you about the future? Jack?
I think personally for me, actually just encouraging myself to be more connected to people, through the job that I work for or not, but within the industry that I work in. And just to hear more voices. Although we are an international company, Glasgow's not exactly surrounded by certainly other distributors or other people in the community. Very fortunate to have an amazing independent cinema in the TFT, the Glasgow Film Theatre, and an amazing film festival, grassroots kind of film community in Glasgow as well. But I think that's been something that's been really that's felt really positive for me and really motivating for me over the last few months, is to feel more connected, and I've definitely had that through the development forum, for example. But I think as well, just really, looking at what the kind of positive disruption that can come from it as well, how programming, could kind of really massively change, and certainly in my job, I'm really keen to hear from more and more programmers about what they want to see, what films aren't available in DCP, what films could we, strike a new 35mm print from, what could be discovered. That's not always the best word to use, but what can we put in front of audiences that will challenge them, without even knowing, how, what the results will necessarily be. There's always a kind of, there can be difficulty in doing that and bringing people together to allow for change to happen, but I'm excited by how that could be disrupted and kind of formalizing a sense of community even more. And maybe I'm saying that, from a kind of distributor background as well, that probably really already exists within the exhibition community, but it's about making sure that transcends not just one sector. And I think that's really, really important to do that.
Liz?
Oh, sorry, I was just listening in and taking notes. I think for me, there may be three key things here. I think industry-wide, it's the humility that's come out of what's happened with COVID and everything else. I think it's been a humbling experience for many people, and they're having to rethink not just their business, but how they treat their partners and freelancers and employees and everybody. And I hope that there's a positive thing that comes out of that. On a personal level, of all the years to start a new job like this, it had to be this one. And I feel like if I can make it through this year, I think if any of us can make it through this year, I think we can pretty much do anything. And I think finally, maybe there is a deep intelligence in anger, actually. I feel like with reckoning with the racial injustice and all these other movements that have come up this year or have continued this year, I think anger can be a useful thing. I don't think we should discount it. I think with all these statements, I think it is true that we should hold people accountable for everything they've said they'll do. But I don't think we should necessarily discount the anger that we feel, not just towards our government and the way the world is right now, but maybe transform that into something, which I think is already happening, as we've seen with this conference. And I'm a big fan of Dial F for Freelancer, by the way. Yeah.
Liz and Manon?
Yeah, basically what both of you said, but it's been such a difficult year, and it's funny to see how this pandemic that is so beyond our control on so many levels has allowed us to really focus on the thing that we can on inwardly see what we can do, what we have control over, and how everybody has been so keen to address endemic bad habits, structural inequality, as you mentioned, Liz, be it with issues like diversity, freelancers, work environment, and I'm just looking forward to 2021 and to see how all those changes, if just want to see those words turn into action. And I think there's been a level of them turning into action, but I think 2021, the future will show if people have made that step beyond just talk, but also actually doing what we're all supposed to do. And yeah, just also maybe more still professionally but personally, we're starting to work towards 2021. I'm just really looking forward to reading about projects, previewing films, and getting back to work. Because I think we all I still feel a sense of purpose and a sense of responsibility towards filmmakers, towards the people that I work with, towards the audiences. And I think that's what I think keeps a lot of people going, is that what we do as, you know, it has a purpose.
Yeah. Thank you. I think we're nearly out of time. Can we have a look at Jasmine's drawing, if we can? It isn't not the best resolution, but glorious. And we will be disseminating this later as well, just so that we have it for the delegates as well. Thank you. I wanted to thank you all so much. I know there's so much we could talk about, and there's so much more we can and will hopefully continue these conversations throughout the year. And so, yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to all of you for joining me to have a little bit of a think around some of the stuff that's come up across this 3-day conference. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Evan.
Bye-bye. Thank you for that to Manon, Jazz, Jack and Liz. Just to answer a question that came up in the chat that would be useful, the screen 2 will be available until midnight, and then later on the recordings will be made available when they're captioned and ready to go. So they will be available later down the line, but today it's just until midnight. So if you want to have a all-night rager catching up on sessions, you can. We're going to be joined shortly by Claire Reddington from Watershed and Joan Parsons from QFT, who will be talking as representatives of a group of 10 invited CEOs from cinemas across the UK who came together during this way up to discuss some of the issues we've been facing. So they'll join us in a few moments. But after that, we will have Catherine Welch come to talk about the evaluation again before we have a wrap up. And then there will be jackpot networking, where you go in and you meet somebody. Once I go off screen, it will be open. It's supposed to be 5:45, but maybe a little bit later. And that will continue for, I think, about an hour after that. So if you do want to continue that networking, you can. While I'm here and before they come on, I just wanted to say thanks again to our sponsors, INDY Cinema Group, the Film Distributors Association, Comscore, and also to our funders at BFI, the National Lottery, as I think it's been really obvious how important it's been to have the opportunity to come together and have some kind of conversation, to reflect a little bit, to take a bit of time out to think about what it is that we do and how we do it and how we can do it better, to commiserate, to vent, to talk about our slippers and our cats, to talk about things we've watched and how we wish we'd been able to see more, and have a little bit of human connection, as I think it's been really difficult to work or not work, or however it's been for everybody. It's not been an easy year for anybody, and this is a community that I think tends to want to come together, and so we've been able to provide a little bit of that has been really fantastic. And obviously it's only a very small start, but I really hope that we can build on these conversations going ahead, because I think that we're all better when we work together, and we're all better when everybody has something to say and can be heard. So we're certainly very excited by some of the conversations that have been started during this conference, and we hope that they don't disappear. I don't know if Joan and Claire are waiting and ready to come on. Hello, hi.
Hi.
Hello, you look so sparkly, Claire. It's lovely to see.
A very grey day. You've got to do something.
Once again, we wish we were with you in your beautiful venue. But spiritually, I feel like I have definitely been on the river, if only in my mind. So I just wanted to we wanted to invite you to have a very short amount of time to talk about the conversation that you had. So Claire, do you want to go ahead and take it away?
Yeah, certainly. So we've just heard about that importance of togetherness, and that's the theme really. So yesterday, as we've heard, a group of CEOs came together. I think first and foremost to meet as humans, to spend some time howling into the wind. It's been a really tough year for everyone in the sector, but in a leadership position, sometimes it's really difficult to know how to unload your worries, I guess, without giving someone else your burden. And so the opportunity to listen, to share, and to bear witness to each other's kind of grieving about the year was really welcome, just as people. It was a really great opportunity. We talked about themes of community, loss, equality, social justice, organisational culture, and of course, business models and money. And Joan's going to pick up a bit of the detail on that. And there was a shared acknowledgement that change is needed in the sector, but it needs to be done properly. A change process needs to be deep, well thought through, and transparent. And we're a small and not very representative group, if there even is such a thing in a sector where there's a massive diversity of business models set up and approach. I think the names of those of us who attended the meeting are being put in the chat, but we had a really short time together, so we're very wary of issuing any great kind of proclamations or learnings from a 2-hour session. But there was the beginning of something, the beginning of an exploration of a commons, I guess, how we might share, consult, act together more to make the best use of our funding, to share risk and encourage solidarity. So we're interested in an ongoing conversation. We want to be as open and inclusive as we can be. So there'll be future opportunities for people to join in the conversation. And now Joan's going to talk about some of the things that some of the detail of what we talked about.
Yeah, so we tried to cover the themes of This Way Up this year, starting with community and then accountability and culture. And Claire mentioned we represent a very varied group of organisations, and it was interesting to see common ground on lots of different areas. We all agree that our organisations are the heart and soul of communities. We have a unique and lasting commitment with the people that we work for and with. We bring cultural identity to our towns, to our villages and our communities. And it's really important that we maintain those connections and think of ways that we can amplify our civic duty in the future. We were looking for ways to continue to explore blending the physical and digital space as we move forward, obviously learning on what we've done this year and taking learning from others. We were looking at sustainability, which is, I think, a word that can mean awfully different things to different people. But for us, it means equity, access and inclusion, and embedding that into our organisations to influence the wider sector. So really taking sustainability seriously and not just thinking about balancing the books. And I think the biggest takeaway for all of us was a commitment to working together and to being brave in the future. And hopefully this was really the beginning of a conversation about how each of us can contribute to a wider commitment from all of our organisations, regardless of their size and scale and makeup, to ensure that we can build better. I don't want to say build back better. I sound like a politician. Not that. Build better back.
Very different. Thank you both. I know it's a bit of a rushed squeeze, but I really appreciate you taking the time to come and feedback from that meeting. And I know that we would like to see that better collaboration across the sector. So really appreciate your commitment and the group's commitment to that. And we look forward to hearing more.
Thank you. Thank you for setting it up for us.
Thank you.